Let us discuss about the sense organs of the sepia. Now, see, we had already discussed about the nervous system of the sepia, and we had learned in detail about the central nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system, how it controls the body of the sepia. But there are various sensory organs which also helps in predatory life of the sepia, and this sense organ not only help him to better adapt into the marine environment but also helps in raising the rate of survival. So let us discuss about the sensory organ. First, we all will be talking about the eye of the sepia. Now we have already seen that it has large beautiful eye. So when you will talk about the eyes, so you know that the eye is present on the dorsolateral surface. Most of the animals we will have seen that the eye are present dorsolaterally. So when we talk about the eye, they are lodged into the orbit. Now when you will observe their orbit, so their orbit is made up of the cartilage, and this is connected with the cranial cartilage. When you will see the animal carefully, so now see in case of human also, you will find that our eye sockets are present into the skull only. So cranial, it is continuous. So like that only the animals eye orbit, it is lodged into the cranial cavity only. And when you will observe their eyes, so they have the striking resemblance with the vertebrate eye. That means they have the complex eye structure. Now let us discuss the structure of the eye in detail. When we talk about the eye, so you will find that the eyeball wall, it is having the cartilaginous plate, and that cartilaginous plate is called as the sclerotic. And you will observe the portion which is covering the exposed part of the eye, that is called as the cornea. Sorry, it is called as the false cornea, not the cornea. This region you all can see. So the exposed region, they, it is having the special integument covering. Integument covering means it is having the layer, so that layer is called as a false cornea. And you all can see this sclerotic cartilage. So this eye is a very rough and tough like structure, and it is made up of the sclerotic cartilage, and this sclerotic cartilage makes the eyeball. Now let us discuss about the pupil. Now we all know that the pupil is the inner portion of the eye, right? So it is, you will observe the large portioning of the skeletic outer side of the head. It is held in the position by ring-like ciliary processes which are projecting inward from the skeletal structure. Now, when you will observe about the iris, so we all know it is the part of the eyeball. So here, eyeball is what? Skeletic. So it is the part of the skeletic surrounding the pupil. Now, when we talk about the, we all know that people have capacity for the movement. That means it can enlarge, it can change its diameter. Why it changes its diameter? To locate the thing. Okay, so that means it can sense, it can change its diameter, it can regulate its diameter. That means it can adjust the distance. Okay, distance vision. So here we have, in case of sepia, it has the muscle fibers in the iris which can regulate the diameter of the pupil to the limited extent only. But in our case, you might have seen that we have the uh, diameter changing capacity too much in our, that is also limited only, but it is better. So we can take a judgment that how far the object is from us. Now, next, between two part of the lens, you will observe there is a thin layer of the cell that is called as the cornea. Then ciliary processes, I had already discussed that it is projecting inward from the skeletic and it supports the lens. Now, lens is one of the most important part of the eye. So when we talk about the lens, you will find that it is dense And glass is spherical body. It is internal to the iris, means inside the iris it is present, and it is projecting slightly through the pupil. Now when we talk about the parts, so roughly lens is divided into the two part, that it consists of the two plano-concave lenses in close apposition. When we talk about ciliary processes, which we had already discussed ahead, so it divides the lens cavity of the eyeball in two unequal parts. Now, when we talk about the part, one is posterior and another is interior. So, interior part you will find that it is having the watery aqueous humor, and large part is the posterior chamber, and it is occupied by the jelly-like vitreous humor. Then choroid is absent in the case of the sepia. Then next part is the retina. Retina is the light sensitive layer. We also have, now what type of cells we do have in our retina? We have the rods and cone cells into the retina, right? So light sensitive layer, that means it is having the light sensitive cells in it. So it is the lining of the posterior chamber. Just now we have discussed that the posterior chamber is composed of the jelly-like humor. So it is composed of the two layer. The inner layer consists of the closed set of parallel rods, and it is contact with the vitreous humor. Then outer layer, when we talk about, so it is outer layer will consist of the retinal rod cells, and internally outside it will connect with the rod cells. And when we talk about internal side, so internal side it is connected with the optic nerve. That means that the cells bases, they are attaching with the optic nerve. Now, what is the optic nerve's role here? Optic nerve expands into the optic ganglion. We have seen the optic ganglion when we were discussing about the nervous system of the sapia. So, where these optic ganglions are situated, it is just behind the eyeball. We all have seen that there was the two big projection was there on the either side of the head. So, this optic ganglion will just form will make a small soft body that is called as the optic gland or white body. Now when we talk about the eyeball, so eyeball can also be slightly moved. Now I don't get confused here, I'm not talking about pupil. Even the eyeball of the sepia can be moved slightly in the various direction. Now a fold of skin can be drawn like an eyelid over the false cornea to the some extent. Means like we have eyelid, so same way they can make a fold of skin on their eye above the false cornea. Now we know false cornea is the exposed part of the eye. So let us discuss once again. We have seen that the eye present on the head, and it is lodged into the orbit, which is made up of the cartilage, and this cartilage is connected with the cranial, that means the brain skull cartilage. Now it is a bit resembled with the vertebrate eyes. Then we have discussed that the transparent portion, which is made up of the integument, it covers the eye, and that is called as the false cornea. Then eyeball is called as the sclerotic, and it is made up of the cartilaginous plate. Then we have discussed about the pupil, that pupil is this opening of the sclerotic on the outer side towards the head, and its position, or you can say that its movement is controlled by the eye muscle. That means it can change its diameter. Then we have discussed about the iris. We know that iris is the part of the sclerotic surrounding of the pupil. Then muscle fibers of the iris can regulate the diameter of pupil to the limited extent. Then we have talked about the cornea. Cornea is the layer between two parts of the lens, and it also have the ciliary processes which projecting inwards from the sclerotic, and it supports the lens. That means all this iris, then cornea, sclerotic, all these are keeping this lens into the position. Now, what is lens? Now, lens is the dense glassy spherical body which is present internal to the iris and it projecting slightly through the pupil. Now when we talk about the structure of the lens, it consists of two plano-concave lenses in close opposition. Then the ciliary processes lens divide the cavity of eyeball into the two unequal parts. One small interior chamber is filled with watery aqueous humor, and when we talk about the posterior chamber, it is the largest chamber and it occupies with the jelly like vitreous humor, and choroid is absent in the case of the sepia. Then we have discussed about the retina. We know retina is the light sensory layer, so here it has two layer. First layer, inner layer, that is in contact with the vitreous humor and that is made up of the parallel rods. When we talk about the outer layer, so outer layer is in contact with the optic nerve. So it means outer layer, if you will see the internal side, it will connected with the rod cells of the inner layer, and outer side it is connected with the nerve fiber. Now nerve fiber, which nerve? Optic nerve. So optic nerve, we know that it is expanded to the optic ganglion. We have seen the position of the optic ganglion when we were talking about the nervous system, that it is present behind the eyeball. Now this optic nerve, it forms a large soft body unknown function near the optic ganglion. That particular soft bodied particle is called as the optic gland or the white body. Now eyeball can also be slightly moved into the various direction by muscle band. Fold of skin is acting as the eyelid. Now, let us discuss about the second sense organ. The role of this sense organ is to act for the equilibrium. Equilibrium maintenance is done by the statocysts. So, these are the highly developed, closely placed. Closely placed means both the it is present into the pair. So, these are present to close to each other. So these statocysts are separated by median cartilaginous septum. Now you need to remember that the septum between two statocysts is cartilaginous. Now when you will observe its position, so it's present posterior to the cartilaginous capsule or cartilage, cranial cartilage. Now it is present very close to the pleurovisceral ganglia. Now let us discuss about the structure. Now when, as I have told you, that it is present into the close proximity of the cranial cartilage, as well as it is present very close to the pleurovisceral ganglia. Now when we see its shape, so it is a round body and it is about 3 millimeter into the diameter. When we talk about the inner surface, so inner surface is having the round flattened epithelium and it makes number of round and pear-shaped elevation into its posterior side. So that's why, because of that, the posterior side is little bit rough. Now when we talk about the posterior surface of the ridge or a crista statica, it is having two ridges. One is the crista statica and the macula statica. So this compose, when we talk about the crystal statica and macula statica, this composed of the large cells with the head-like process on the surface and the process of the base continuous with the fibers of the statocyst nerve. Now, what is the function of it? It is acting as the vestibular organ. That means it is maintaining the equilibrium of the body. So we will observe that a large statolith, it's attached to the macula, is present into the cavity. So this is about the statocyst. We have learned that the statocyst is the organ of the equilibrium and it is highly developed organ. It is present into the cartilaginous septum of the posterior portion of the cranial cartilage. That means it is the continuation of the brain skull only, all right? So it is present very close to the pleurovisceral ganglia. Then we have learned that its shape is round about 3 millimeter into the diameter. And if we talk about its inner surface, so inner surface is flat and made up of the epithelium, and it is thrown into the number of round and the pear-shaped elevations when we talk about the posterior surface. So posterior surface forms ridge of the crista statica and macula statica. So these are composed of the large cells. Now see what is the function of these cells. These cells, Statocyst cells, are large cells, means it's having the cylindrical shape and the hair-like process. Now what this hair-like process is doing, this hair-like process is helping or giving the signals to the statocyst nerve. So in short, it acts for the hearing. As we all know that in the case of the human also, the hearing is the mechanical process. So when this hair-like cells move, so it produces the mechanical pressure and it causes or it forwarded the voice. So same here also, hair-like process is present on the surface, and process of the base means this hair process of the base, it is continuous with the fiber of the statocyst nerve. Then statole is attached to the macula and it is present into the cavity. Let us discuss about the next organ, which is very important for a predator, that is the olfactory organ. Olfactory organ means the organ of the smell. Now, why it is important to have the olfactory organ? Because they are predators. So when they smell, so that time they can jump for the prey. So the olfactory pits, when you will observe, it is present behind the eyes. Then pits are lined with the ciliated cells. Now these ciliated cells means various, not all, various ciliated cells are the sensory cells, and these sensory cells are connected their bases with the olfactory nerves. As we all have seen that the hair-like cells, they are connected, their bases are connected with the statocyst nerve. So here also the bases of the nerve cells are connected with the fiber of olfactory nerve. Now when we talk about this sensory cells, so these sensory cells are connected to the nerve fiber from small ganglion, which is close to the optic ganglion. We all have seen the position of the olfactory ganglion, right? So olfactory ganglion are small. Now, last organ, that is the organ of taste, the gustatory organ. So gustatory organ is a small elevation on the buccal floor. It is just present in front of the odontophore. When we talk about the gustatory organ, it covered with the papilla and it is thought to be an organ of taste. So this is all about the sensory organ of the sepia. We had discussed with the various physiological processes, and this was the last lecture of this unit, and at the end I'm going to share my PowerPoint of this unit with whichever slides I have used for this particular unit. So that's it about the sepia. So if you have any doubt, definitely you all can ask me. So we'll stop at this note now.